Hello and welcome to Philosophy Roulette number 69, dudes. Let's do some philosophy. What do we got? New journal articles. Alright, so we've been looking at this. You know what? I feel like something... Let's go see if analysis has anything. I feel like let's go good old hardcore analytic if we can for a sec. I'm doing too much of this things I don't know what I'm talking about. I feel bad. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. See if I can find something. Not that I really know what's going on over here, but it's like, you know, everyone has their comfort level with reading stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. Back to the wheelhouse. Review of the multiple realization book. I mean, are there more than one of them? And like the book gets multiply realized? Does each of the tokens of the type? Is that... I don't know. All swamping, no problem. I think I tried to get this one before. But I want to read this. Maybe he uploaded it now. I doubt it. Joseph Beadle. Nope. No, Mr. Beld. Okay. Read this. Did we do... I think I might have even read this cosmological thing. This is the problem. We've done all the analysis. Definitely did Newcomb University. That was interesting to read. Don't... Literal self-deception. I don't like doing replies, but hey, maybe one of these times. We did this one. Medical nihilism. What humans should say about tied best systems. I don't think I read that one. Well, I can't read it. That's sad. Probabilistic knowledge in action. Carlotta Papici. Alright, I don't think I did probabilistic knowledge. And it looks like this is going to be, oh, that's right, there was a book called Probabilistic Knowledge. Okay, so we'll have to probably on that. But hey, that's cool. Let's do some probabilistic knowledge in action. Carlotta Papici. Cornell University. Okay. If you join me live, you can type exclamation point paper in the chat box and it will pull up the link to the paper so you can follow along. Also, hey, I would take a suggestion too. If anybody has something interesting they want me to read, please send it along. I mean, as long as I don't know what it is, then it's still roulette. So, which is cool. So let's see what happens here. Not for public release. Look at that big old thing. Yeah, this is the, looks like you got the, this is the last, copy before, publication. So they had all the, formatting marks on it. Book symposium. Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, see, I don't want to do a book symposium because then it's like all these books. I don't know what it is. Shucks. I'm sorry, folks. I was all excited there for a second. Boo. Matteo Ravasio. Oh, this is sad. So sad. People should upload their papers to Phil Papers. It'd be so nice. Let's see what else we got. Only yes, language and evolution of and these things with bias. Grounding grounds necessity. Did I read this? Well, I can't read it. Ah, come on, my friends. Come on, my friends. If you want your stuff to be read, you actually have to put a little bit of effort in. Okay, cool. Mr. Anders Herlitz, or Mr. They, or whatever your preferred pronoun is, I don't know. Although I do have a friend named Anders, and he goes by he, so I'll have that sort of history with it. Okay, let's try this. See. Okay, cool. And like I said, please send me a suggestion if you have a suggestion. It would be super helpful to for me to have something without having to. Well, I do kind of like searching. I like showing everyone what I'm up to. That like this is really I have not read any of this stuff and I don't know what I'm doing. Not that I knew what I was doing anyway, but let's go. Okay, no abstract. A notorious problem in axiology, normative theory, and population ethics is the apparent ubiquity of what I generally call nondeterminacy. Sometimes practical reasons fail to fully determine an option that is, all things considered, best, that is, better than or equally good as every alternative option. In this paper, I will argue that nondeterminacy poses problems that are deeper than some have thought by illustrating how practical reasons that admit of nondeterminacy can spawn cyclical evaluations. This shows first that there are choice situations characterized by nondeterminacy in which standard approaches to how to revise rational choice criteria in light of nondeterminacy fail to identify any permissible alternative, and this is problematic because some options really seem permissible. Second, it shows that accepting that practical reasons admit of nondeterminacy in some cases amounts to accepting that the better than relation is not transitive. Okay. In what follows, I will first introduce what I call nondeterminacy in further length and present a general view of how one might reason and form decisions in face of nondeterminacy problems. In the following section, I argue that in some contexts, this view fails to be action guiding because in some cases practical reasons that admit of nondeterminacy lead to cyclical evaluations. There is a concluding section. Well, that's interesting. I've never actually seen someone just be like, and I'm also going to tell you what the conclusion is. Okay. I am, like, always concerned with how to construct a good philosophy paper. Philosophy is very hard to write. There's a lot of difficulties just everywhere in all these things. And so it's like how to write a good philosophy paper is always good advice on that score is always welcome. And if any of these people have some sort of like feature about their papers, I want to know what makes making philosophy writing more straightforward or easier. The rhetoric is very difficult. Okay, but anyway. So it's just like the idea that you're even just saying this is of rhetorical import in some sense. Like, why is that there? That's interesting. That's good, probably. Alright, nondeterminacy. Although an interesting topic, I will, throughout the paper, set aside problems relating to uncertainty and failure to determine what to do due to uncertainty. In other words, throughout the paper, I will assume that decision makers have full knowledge of all relevant facts. Well, that's fair. A lot of people do that. Even when decision makers have full knowledge of all relevant facts, there are different theoretical views that say practical reasons can fail to fully determine a best alternative. Derek Parfit has in recent writings defended the possibility of what he calls imprecise equality as a comparative relation. Ruth Chang has argued that we should reject what she calls the trichotomy thesis, that is, the view that the trichotomy more than p less than p equal as p exhausts the set of possible positive comparative relations two subjects can bear to each other with respect to p, and defends the possibility of parity, a fourth positive comparative relation. A lot of comparatives there. John Broome and others have argued that it is sometimes indeterminate which comparative relations hold between two objects due to the fact that criteria used to make comparisons sometimes are vague. Rabinowitz, I think I said that somewhat right, has illustrated how there exists a whole family of non-conventional value relations if one accepts the fitting attitudes approach to value. I will not present any arguments that non-determinacy problems exist and are relevant. I will not defend any particular theory of how we should understand non-determinacy. Rather, I will start from the assumption that practical reasons admit of non-determinacy in order to explore the consequences of this and define it in the following way. Non-determinacy. X and Y are non-determinate in their ranking with respect to F if it is not determined that X is more F than Y, not determined that X is less F than Y, not determined that X and Y are equally F. Okay, so it's like a purely negative thing. You can't order them or find out if they're equal. Parfit, Chang, Broome, Rabinowitz, and others who have recognized non-determinacy probably all accept non-determinacy, although they accept on different grounds. Yeah, so this is just blocking the well-orderedness of things and equality in it. So that's okay. Alright. Parfit, Chang, Broome, How might one use sets of practical reasons that fail to fully determine a best alternative in every situation in the processes that aim at the formation of intention to act? More precisely, given that one ought to form intentions to do that which, in light of the reasons that apply to the choice situation, is best all things considered. That is, given what Chang calls comparativism. How can and should one use sets of practical reasons that admit of non-determinacy in one's reasoning process? Let's see. So if not everything is comparable. See, this is blocking comparability. Is this comparativism. Like most things you can say compare. So how do they compare? And if it's non-determinate, the comparisons fail. So okay, comparativism. Okay. A common view in the literature on non-determinacy problem is that these problems can be addressed by revising one's conception of rational choice. How to revise the conception of rational choice depends on how one conceptualizes non-determinacy. That is, parity, indeterminacy with the fitting attitudes approach. We were talking about fitting attitudes the other day too. Interesting topic. Consider a situation where no option is determinate to be at least as good as every alternative in the choice set. Alright, let's consider a situation where no option is determined to be at least as good as every alternative in the choice set. What's that mean, not as good as every alternative? Look, if I want to have chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry ice cream in one of those like tri-flavor ice cream boxes, and you might not care which one it is. So none of them are at least as good. All right. I'm trying to figure out, do this in terms of ice cream. Imagine a situation in which an administrative region needs to decide whether to allocate a fixed amount of resources either to information campaigns regarding the dangers of smoking or to a pediatric care unit that can use the resource to provide healthcare to a small number of very sick children. The decision makers recognize that what matters to the choice is that the amount of health benefits is as great as possible, but also that some priority should be given to the worse off. The choice set consists of three alternatives. A. Hire firm X to make an information campaign that will reach 1 million people. B. Hire firm Y to make an identical information campaign that will reach the same million people plus 1,000 more. C. Allocate the resources to the pediatric care unit so that a small number of very sick children can be cured. But, you get a lot of good press off that too, so who knows. Assume that neither of the conventional comparative relations determinately holds between either A and C or between B and C. A and C are non-determinate in their ranking, and B and C are non-determinate in their ranking. Okay. So there's no, like, you can't really measure. I guess between A and B it makes some sense, but between A and C it's just sort of a qualitative, not you have to make some, there's no easy comparison. Okay, this poses problems for conventional comparative practical reasoning. There is no best alternative in the choice set A, B, C. Yet this does not mean one cannot reasonably pick any of the alternatives. Although A and C are non-determinate in the ranking, A should not be considered an eligible alternative. In case C is not selected, B should be selected. Yeah, so you shouldn't waste the money there's also that sort of thing. How to appropriately conceptualize this in terms of decision criteria at first sight depends on how one explains nondeterminacy. Those who explain nondeterminacy with reference to some non-conventional comparative relation or incomparability can explain why A should be considered ineligible with reference to how it is not maximal, that is, it is not worse than any alternative because it is worse than B. Those who explain nondeterminacy with reference to indeterminacy and vagueness can explain why A should be considered ineligible with reference to how it is not best on any admissible specification. Those who use the fitting attitude framework can explain why A should be considered ineligible with reference to how it is not preferred or equally preferred to every alternative on permissible preference ordering. Without committing to any particular explanatory framework, one might say that A is ineligible because it is not determinately maximal, determinate maximality. And option X is determinately maximal with respect to F if and only if X is not worse than any alternative with respect to F. There is no admissible specification of F, on which it is true that some alternative Y is better than X and C. There is no alternative Z such that it is only permissible to prefer X to Z. Okay, yeah, so don't take the one that you can sort of compare sometimes and is worse sometimes. It has been suggested that the nondeterminacy does not pose a serious challenge to rational choice because also in choice situations characterized by nondeterminacy, there are options that are determinately maximal and one can revise one's conception of rational choice and replace optimality with determinate maximality. On this view, determinate maximality is a necessary and sufficient criterion for permissibility. In the next section, I will illustrate how this solution is unsatisfactory in at least some situations. Okay, so it's like, yeah, you do, all this literature is coming to us, you do what's reasonable. Like, you don't take the option that is better and is worse in some cases. You take the one that if you got, like, that subset of options, you take the best out of those. Then there's other options that you can't equally, you can't compare as equally, but in the subset of the options that you can compare, you do what you can do best then. So that's fair. So then they're going to come down here and then they say, well, fine, so there's still a problem with even taking the best of the subsets. So yeah, so if you have like a looped subset, it's going to happen. So that's why you have cycles. That's what I think's happening. Anyway, revising one's conception of rational choice so that determinate maximality is a necessary and sufficient condition for permissibility is an inadequate response to at least some non-determinacy problems. To see this, consider the kinds of cases in which two evaluative criteria are lexically ordered and the non-determinacy problem arises because the lexically superior criterion fails to fully determine a conventional positive comparative relation between alternatives. Okay, I don't quite know exactly what that means yet. An alternative X is better than another Y if and only if X is more P than Y, or 2. X and Y are non-determinate in their rankings with respect to P, and X is more R than Y. So you've got two things, P and R, and either X is more P or X is more R. And that's only if P fails, then you fall back to R. Consider the following situation. I will use the greater than to note better than. Okay. A is more P than B, thus A is better than B. B and C are non-determinate in their ranking with respect to P, and B is more R than C, thus B is better than C. A and C are non-determinate in their ranking with respect to P, and C is more R than A, thus C is better than A. There is a cycle in the choice set. A is greater than B is greater than C, and C is greater than A. No alternative is determinately maximal in this situation. Yeah, if only determinately maximal alternatives can be rational choices, there can be no rational choice in this situation. Okay, that's fair. So if you've got two different ranking criterion, you can sort of make one better than the other, and and then the other better than another one, but then if you use the secondary ranking, you can get that third to loop around. This seems wrong. C is in some sense better than the others, so at least... Wait, why is C better than the others? It says right here, B is greater than C. B is greater than C. This seems wrong, and C is in some sense better than the others, so at the very least, C seems permissible. Okay. Oh yeah, because these are supposed to rule out permissibility. If the evaluative criteria are lexically ordered so that P is held to be lexically superior than R, it seems irrational to choose B. B is the only alternative that P does not determine to be worse than another. But if it's clear that B should not be selected, A seems irrational. C is, in light of this, the best option and should be considered a permissible option. Since there is no determinately maximal option in this case, and there seems to be one permissible option, determinately maximality cannot be a necessary criterion for permissibility. The case illustrates how determinate maximality is an unhelpful permissibility criterion in some cases characterized by non-determinacy. Yeah, sure. Alright, so depending on how you'd have like you'd have to index the greater than thing to know which type of better than, like the P or the R, this greater than is actually indexed to, and then you sort of knock out the worse ones. And so once you fail on, you have a loop, so you fail maximality, but then you can knock out certain ones because they're not exactly the same greater than relation. So it's not uniform. Alright, that makes some sense. Consider an illustration of a case in which options relate to each other in this way. Imagine a philosophy department hiring a new professor. That's not happening anytime soon. The committee accepts the possibility of non-determinacy and uses the following criteria to rank the candidates. Philosophical competence and candidates from underrepresented groups, that is, women and non-white candidates, should be given some priority. The committee also accepts that the first criterion is lexically superior to the second. Only in comparisons in which the first criterion fails to determine a best candidate does the second criterion apply. There are three candidates: Alex, a white man; Beata, a non-white woman; and Cleo, a white woman. With respect to philosophical competence, only Alex and Beata are determinately ranked with conventional comparative relations. They have similar teaching skills in the same area of specialty, but Alex is a more promising researcher in this area. Alex is better than Beata with respect to philosophical competence. Thereby, Alex is a better candidate than Beata. Cleo is very accomplished, but works in a different area of philosophy. With respect to philosophical competence, Alex and Cleo, as well as Beata and Cleo, are non-determinate in their ranking. Since Alex does not come from an underrepresented group and Cleo does, Cleo is a better candidate than Alex. Since Beata is both non-white and a woman, she is a better candidate than Cleo with respect to the second criterion. Beata is thereby a better candidate than Cleo. Thus, Alex is better than Beata, is better than Cleo, is better than Alex. Alex is a better candidate than Beata in virtue of having greater philosophical competence. Beata is better than Cleo since they are non-determinate in their ranking with respect to philosophical competence, and Beata is better than Cleo with respect to the second criterion. Yeah, more minority property. Cleo is better than Alex since they are non-determinate in their ranking with respect to philosophical competence, and Cleo is better than Alex with respect to the second criterion. No alternative is determinately maximal with respect to the decision criteria used. On the view that determinate maximality is a necessary and sufficient condition for permissibility, there is no permissible choice. Again, this seems wrong. The department is committed to selecting the candidate with the greatest philosophical competence and has decided that this is a lexically superior criterion. Beata is not determinately maximal with respect to this criterion, and this should plausibly mean that she is discarded and considered ineligible. Furthermore, since only Alex and Cleo are determinately maximal alternatives with respect to lexically superior criterion, and since Cleo is better than Alex, Alex should also be plausibly considered an unreasonable choice. Surely Cleo is a permissible alternative. There is no determinately maximal option, but there seems to be a permissible option. This discussion illustrates two important things regarding non-determinacy and how to respond to non-determinacy problems. First, accepting that evaluative criteria and practical reason admit of non-determinacy will in some cases amount to accepting that evaluative criteria and practical reasons entail cyclical evaluations. Yeah, sure. If Second, if evaluative criteria admit of non-determinacy, there will be cases in which there is no determinately maximal alternative, although some option is permissible. The first issue reveals that accepting non-determinacy might lead to accepting non-transitive better than relations. There's a problem with transitivity when you're dealing with anything like non-mathematical. What exactly does this better than come to? Yeah, I think the author mentioned that transitivity might fail somewhere. Those who believe in the general possibility that practical reasons can admit of non-determinacy, but at the same time are convinced that the better relation is transitive, yes, should be worried about this. The argument shows that in order to preserve the transitivity of better than, there must be constraints on which and when and how practical reasons can admit of non-determinacy. What are these constraints? Yeah, it's like, I remember a few years back, someone won like big old prize because they showed that human preferences aren't transitive. You might like pretzels more than you like you might like chocolate more than you like pretzels, but then you might like pretzels more than you like gummy bears, but then that doesn't show that you like chocolate more than you like gummy bears. It's like, yeah, they're not. There's different sort of modes of these are non. Transitivity does not obey like it doesn't work all the time. It's like it works only on very sort of limited formalized systems like mathematics, and in that case it does great, but the rest of the time it's only for the most part. Alright. The second issue means that the challenge from rational choice posed by non-determinacy problems is greater than proponents of solution that invoke maximality, admissible specifications, and permissible preference orderings have previously thought. Insofar as one, I don't know about this, I'd like to see some references right here, but that's alright. Insofar as one accepts that practical reasons admit of non-determinacy in a way that leads to cyclical evaluations, and that there are permissible options in these cases, it is insufficient to revise the conception of rational choice in the way that, for instance, Amartya Sen has suggested. More research is needed to identify appropriate responses to non-determinacy problems if they lead to cyclical evaluations. Yeah, you have to find some way of ordering the preferences, like as they were saying, competence versus minority status or whatever. I mean, you may think one's better than the other, but how much and like to what degree, and it may not be so clear in all cases that one really is much better. In other cases, it might be. So you could have like multi-level cyclical problems. In particular, two kinds of approaches seem particularly interesting to explore. On the one hand, one might be able to formulate constraints on which, when and how practical reasons admit of non-determinacy in terms of what qualifies as a permissible lexically inferior criterion when some lexically superior criterion admits of non-determinacy. On the other hand, one might be able to revise the conception of rational choice so that one's decision method is action guiding, also when there are cyclical evaluations, by taking inspiration from so-called tournament solutions in social choice theory. How to spell out these approaches is, however, a topic for a different time. I mean, just from reading too much of the logic stuff as of late, I mean, you could have these sort of, you can just accept the non-determinacy, like inconsistent systems. I bet there's ways to go about that too. You could definitely have one of these inconsistent logical systems that would still give you a, like some sort of different, not necessarily inconsistent, but like a multi-valued logical system. You could definitely do that, and then you could just end up ranking the values like more or less according to those logics. Anywho, okay. I don't know what the tournament system is here too. There could be tournament systems like where you have like yeah, that might that probably amounts to something similar. In this paper, I have illustrated that accepting that practical reasons admit of non-determinacy in some cases implies that practical reasons lead to cyclical evaluations. On the one hand, I argue that this gives reasons for those who accept the general possibility of non-determinacy but are convinced that the better than relation is transitive to think about which practical reasons might admit of non-determinacy. On the other hand, it gives reasons for proponents of revisions of conceptions of rational choice in line with Sen's proposal that maximality suffices for rational choice to rethink their approach. Yeah, this is part of the issue, is this better than, and I have an issue, as I've mentioned before, just recently, that assigning numbers to like preferences is a very tenuous sort of project. How exactly much are we? What does it mean to assign some, like my preference 95 versus 96 versus 9,400,003? Like, what does that mean? What's the difference in relative value at that point? I don't know. So it's like when you have these multi-level ratios, then you're sort of arbitrarily assigning this, and how much are we really getting out of the differences in the mathematical differences then, because you've set it up from the get-go to be that way. So I don't know. I like what the author did here, because just trying to get a maximal thing, like the highest rank on in some ordering, you're not going to be able to get that because of these problems, because the way you set it up is going to make a big difference. So this is good for that. Anything else interesting to say about this? Yeah, and I don't really like, yeah, like I feel like these should be indexed, because I feel like this is glossing over the issue of different ranking schemes. It's kind of the point that if you don't, then you just get this loop, but yeah, that's the problem with just treating better than as sort of a naive better than, just one thing's better than the other without any qualifications. Okay, but that's it for now. Please send me something if you think it's interesting and you want me to read it. Otherwise, have a good night, stay safe everyone, and I'll see you probably in tomorrow morning. Bye bye.